Hey everybody, we're back again today in our look at the Beatles album by album. We're going to rank the songs on them from worst to best. Today we're doing their second album with the Beatles. Sam St. John is my guest. As always, this is a project we've taken on since we did the White Album, and we kind of like going through this. It's a nice history lesson and a way to enjoy the Beatles once more. So Sam, great to have you here again. Thank you for coming on. And
Thanks, Rich.
where do you have the with the Beatles ranked in your album ranking before we dig into the songs? About where do you think it would place?
It would probably be in the bottom five, I would say.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
a couple of the Beatles early albums, even Please Please Me might be in that bottom five as well, just because again they're cover centric.
Yes.
You don't have the Beatles fully expanding, although more so in this album than their previous album. They're really honing their craft as songwriters. I mean, even when this album came out the same year as Please Please Me, and there's already some growth, but I mean, they're still, for these songs, they're still hanging on to some of the covers that they were doing with the Cavern Club, and so some of these, obviously predate this album, but the Beatles were just about to jump into Beatlemania. But I mean, you got some great tracks on here, but again, it's probably in my lower five Beatles albums. But as we mentioned in our other couple videos, Beatles albums, the worst of the lot are brilliant albums. So
I have it ranked probably at the bottom. That and Yellow Submarine's at the bottom, of course, and then this would be
but can't really count.
It doesn't count. And I have this down for seven Lennon and McCartney tunes, 1 Harrison, and 6 covers. That's the breakdown. So without any further ado, let's kick this off and do our rankings. You're going to kick it off at number 14.
Yeah, number 14. It's a cover. Well, no, sorry, it's not. It's a Lennon McCartney track. Not a second time. It's the second to last song on the album.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't stand out to me. I think it's one even that they've even disregarded in their catalog because it's junk. I know John Lennon disregarded even some of his bigger songs as junk, and he wasn't exactly the best judge of their work. But this one, I wouldn't say it's junk, but it's definitely filler. It's almost like he's just like at the end, he's like, not a second time. Like it's just repetition on the song. And it's one of those songs like, you're like, oh, this song, has this been done before? It's similar to other, kind of filler tracks with the Beatles and with some other artists as well. So my least favorite on this album, Not a Second Time.
Yeah, it's not much higher on mine either, so it's a little bit higher. Number 14 for me is a cover of Devil in Her Heart. I just never really liked it. I know it has a mariachi kind of sound to it. It's got the devil. It's just not my cup of tea for a Beatles song, so I dismiss it. Number 14.
Yeah, I've got it a little bit further down, but it's another one that it's in. But number 13, I just went, my first two songs are number 13 and 14 on the album. So it's Money, That's What I Want. It's a cover. It's just never been one. I think I prefer the original, which they play a lot on the oldie station where I live.
Yep.
I don't know. I just don't like John's vocals on it, and I think it's one that he enjoyed singing, because I think they did it live even a couple albums after this when they were still touring. And it's got some neat little harmonies by Paul and George in the background. That's what I want. Now give me money. That's what I want. It's never one that stood out to me, and it's a fun song. I'm sure it was fun for them to play in the clubs and in some of the early theaters that they were playing in. But again, it's one that when I used to have all these songs on my iPod as a kid that I would skip if it just came up on shuffle.
Yeah, I have it in the middle of the pack. My number 13 is I Want to Be Your Man. To me, this is just filler. Ringo's on lead vocal here, run of the mill kind of Beatles song. It's not horrible, but I have to fill out that bottom end of the rung, and that's where it's going to be for me, number 13.
Yeah, and it was given to the Stones though, and the Stones had a bigger hit with it than the Beatles did, and they kind of made it bluesy, slowed it down some.
I probably like the Stones version better for sure.
Yeah. Number 12 It's another harmonica song. Like a lot of these early Beatles songs were Little Child is
Yeah.
number 13.
Yep.
It's kind of like John, little child wearing it, little child wearing it. I like the harmony, I'm so sad and
Yeah.
lonely. I like that a lot. And again, I love the harmonica, and as everybody, well, most people know, Rich and I like Americana, so harmonica can kind of fit in with the Americana style. So that's always a plus.
Yeah.
It's actually a shame that John kind of gave up the harmonica once they started. Really after the first 4 albums, he was kind of like, I'm done with the harmonica, and that was such a staple of their early stuff.
Yeah.
And I think other than like Rocky Raccoon on the White Album, they didn't really bring the harmonica back much. But number 12, Little Child, it's a nice little song. I'm actually surprised it's on the first half of the album. It seems like a side B album cut, but it's not. But again, it's not one that I reach for.
I agree. Number 12 for me is Not a Second Time, which you mentioned at 14. Just mediocrity, uninspired lyric. There's no real hook, no chorus that I can get back and sing along with, really. Not a second time. I mean, it's just kind of dull for me. So
Yeah.
number 12.
Number 11 is the second track, All I've Got to Do.
Wow. Okay.
Kind of a neat intro, kind of acapella, whenever I pop, and then Ringo comes in with it.
Yeah.
I really like it. Again, harmonies. The Beatles are really underrated as a harmony band. I mean, you think harmony and rock and roll, you think, Simon and Garfunkel, Crosby, Stills and Nash, maybe even like the Hollies, almost more so than the Beatles. But the three main vocalists of the Beatles, John, Paul, and George, really were tight. I mean, they loved the Everly Brothers. They loved, those early, doo-wop groups that all were harmony, the African American songs.
Even those girl groups, they love
the girl groups, the Shirelles, the Cookies.
Yes.
And at this point, 1963, you had groups. Phil Spector was starting to make an appearance on the scene, so you had those types of groups come up as well. So they really stood their own, and I really like the harmonies on this one. And like I said, I really like the acapella, kind of just really brief, whenever, like just one word, and then that drum comes in, and then when they sing All I Gotta Do, and then Ringo really comes in onto it, kind of like in another time signature. So it's a neat song. Again, it's another one of those where, as I mentioned on our Please Please Me video, I always associate it as like the second song on the album.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So that's my number 11.
Yeah, that's way up on my list. It's going to be in the top 5 for sure. I love that song. My number 11 is Hold Me Tight. This is a Paul song. It's early Beatles, but I consider it early Beatles filler for me. It's just not a great memorable song. Sounds like it was thrown together. Hold me tight. It's just, I don't know. It's not memorable. It's not a standout track. So it's one of the reasons it pulls this album down. It's not, I think with the Beatles is not as good as Please Please Me. It's not as good as Beatles for Sale, Hard Day's Night. All those early albums I prefer to this. So, and this is one of the reasons, because the filler tracks are just not as good as the average track on those other records. So.
Right. All right, Rich, I think we're moving into the top 10 once again. You mentioned this one already, and actually this one I kind of, when I put it as number 10, I was like, is that really a top 10 song? But it's The Devil in Her Heart. I think it's because I love George Harrison's voice so much.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of just the strength of his, he probably had the most heart in his voice as any of them. And even, he's a young kid here, 19, 20 years old. She's got the devil in her heart, and then but eyes they tell a lie. Like, his voice is still kind of quivering a little bit, and I don't consider myself to be a singer, but he you can tell that he's he's still got kind of like that, he's just post puberty kind of voice where he's still he's finding his own voice there. But I've always liked the song, and again, it's a cover, but I love George's stuff, and even if he didn't write it, I still like his young voice on it.
Yeah, see, that's what makes these lists great, because we each bring our own baggage with us and our preferences, so to speak. Like George is always going to get points in your book because he's, a favorite of yours. Whereas I'm going to go for this, anything that has a harmonica or those harmonies or sing along stuff, they get extra points.
Yeah.
And covers
Yeah.
are getting less points. So we each, we have our own favorite styles, and I can see why that George song would work for you more than it would
Yeah.
work for me. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
My number 10 is Little Child. You mentioned this earlier, right? Little Child. Yeah.
I did. It was my number 12.
Complete total filler. There's not much to it. Little Child, Little Child. I mean, it's lucky it made it to number 10. If I had to redo the list over again, it probably wouldn't. I would probably take Hold Me Tight over it. But
yeah, that's the thing. At the time of us recording this list is probably 5 or 6 days old.
Yeah,
because I did it. I had other things that were taking up my time, so I did it early, and it might change.
Yeah,
I'm looking
some
at
of
it. I
these,
was like, is that true?
right? Some of these are packed in so tight that they're interchangeable. They really are.
Right.
All right, cool. Number 9.
Number 9, you mentioned it earlier. It's the Ringo track. I Want to Be Your Man.
Mhm.
Ringo's songs, for the most part, kind of hit the middle for me because I like Ringo's stuff with the Beatles, even though he didn't really write more than just a couple of songs that the Beatles recorded in their career. We mentioned it earlier. The Stones were given it kind of as a gift, and everybody's talking about even now, like, the Beatles versus the Stones. And they really were friends. They were hanging out at the same clubs. They were, playing the same places. Maybe not the same time, but they were taking the same crowd. I really like how it sounds. I love that first guitar, that bend, like that bow now, and then it kind of just goes. It's like it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's almost like it doesn't fit. Like it was tacked on from another song.
Mhm.
And then the harmony with the chorus. I want to be your man. Bow bow
Yeah.
bow. I like it a lot. And then there's that Paul McCartney scream with a wow, like that he
Yeah,
does.
that's cool. I like that part
And
too.
it's another one. It's another fun one to see live. Again, I've mentioned it in a couple of videos that we've done that I saw Ringo do this live. He's still doing it. So he might hate it, but he still does it, and he still knocks the tar out of it. So it's number 9. It's middle of the road for me for this one.
My number 9 is another cover, Till There Was You, Paul, from the Music Man stage play or musical.
Mhm.
It's a nice vocal. I like the way Paul does it. It's just middle of the road kind of pop for me. I consider it an uncool Beatle. I wrote my notes, uncool Beatles song. There were bells on a hill, and da, da, da. But it's beautifully arranged and carried out by Paul. It's just not a favorite of mine. What can I say? Number 9.
That'll show up later on for me. So
Okay.
stay tuned. Number 8 is the first recorded George Harrison track, George Harrison penned track. It's Don't Bother Me. And I believe that when George wrote his memoir, the I'm Me Mine book, I think this is one of the only songs that I think it was the only Beatles song that he didn't mention in the book. And I think it's because, he's 19 years old. He might be writing this song, on a, the back of an envelope, at his parents' house, I don't know. But it's a simple track, but again, it's a George Harrison vocal. I love it. I think it's a neat sounding song. It's a very different sounding song. You can tell it wasn't written by Paul and John, but I'm sure he was taking lessons from them, just because still at this point he's a young, late teens, early 20s, and he, at that age, 3 or 4 years makes a big difference. When John and Ringo were born in 1940, right. George was born in 43. That 3-year period makes a big difference.
Sure,
especially with their experience at that time. So,
yep.
I've always liked the song. I wish that George would have kept it in his repertoire the few times that he performed live after the Beatles broke up. But anyway, we still have this recorded version, so that's my number 8 on this list.
I have mine pretty much higher up. I like it a lot too, but I wanted to get these covers out of the way because they right in dead solid in the middle. My number 8 is Please Mr. Postman. a cover of the Motown hit by the Marvelettes, which was a #1 hit for the Marvelettes. I like John's vocal on here. It's not bad. It's, competent, but in comparison, I always go back to comparing to the Marvelettes. It just suffers in comparison for me, and lands at #8.
Well, my #7 is back to another cover. I've had a few Lennon McCartney's. #7 is Roll Over Beethoven. Again, George again. And this is one that he did later on. I think he even played this with Carl Perkins. And I think with Carl Perkins, but he might have played it with Chuck Berry as well. It's a Chuck Berry song, but it's one that he played, later on. So he obviously loved this song. One of those early guitar gods, Chuck Berry, that George and the Beatles loved to emulate. Between Berry and Carl Perkins and Buddy Holly, those were some of their big three, I would say. They're Mount Rushmore. I love how, I love how he says Tchaikovsky. Just tell Tchaikovsky the music. His voice it's almost like he's got a cold. It's like, you can feel it rocking, get your love and read. I think he does it really well. It's very charming, but they really rock out on it. And it was a favorite of mine when I first heard the album, and you can tell they're having fun in the studio with it.
It's a good track. I have it coming up shortly. My #7 is one you had pretty far down the list, and that was Money, the cover of the Barrett Strong 1959 hit. I like it. I don't love it. Instrumentally, I think it's real solid. Lennon's vocals are good, but it's dead solid in the middle for me. I can take or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
From #6 on up, I would say these are all good songs for me.
Yeah.
I had to draw a line somewhere, so that was it.
Right. Yeah, and I would say probably from my #9 onward, they're all songs that I would crave to listen to. Like, okay, I haven't heard that song. Let me listen to that.
Yeah.
And then 14 through 10 were all songs that I would, if they disappeared, I wouldn't hurt. No offense, I know the Beatles people will come at us, but
I know
that's just how it is. But so that brings us to #6, just outside the top 5. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's Hold Me Tight.
Mm-hmm.
I love the back and forth. Hold me tight. It's you.
That's the best part. Yep.
I really like how it sounds. It's kind of funny. The song almost starts like it's like in the middle of the song. It kind of just like down. It feels so right. It's almost like did the record skip? Did we get into another song? And I think it's one of those. You can tell it's like and with these early Beatles songs, like you could tell that they were Lennon McCartney tracks. Like it wasn't like a John Lennon song with Paul McCartney's name attached to it, or vice versa.
Right.
They were still hungry. They were still young. I mean, they weren't they weren't millionaires at this point. Mm-hmm. They were still kind of trying to prove themselves, and this is their second album in just a year, and they're showing their own. Again, with Hold Me Tight, it's a great pop song. They're trying to put their name out into the pop canon at that point, and I've always loved that song. I love how it starts, like I said, kind of in the middle of another song, and just great harmonies. I love the call and response back and forth. So that's my #6.
Very good. I should have probably had that a little higher too, because I like the part you're talking about, the call and response. Mm-hmm. #6, Roll Over Beethoven, the cover of the Chuck Berry classic. It's really hard to live up to anything that Chuck Berry did, but I think they do a pretty damn good job on this song, especially given it's one of Chuck's signature songs. And
absolutely.
And they do an excellent job. It rocks for sure. Early Beatles, it's definitely a rock and roll tune. I love George's vocal on it as well. So it just sounds good. You play it now, it sounds like a winner. So
yeah. I think it's one of those songs too, because we switched our 7 and 6 with that song. It's one of those songs where you don't hear one or the other and think like, oh, that version is so much worse than the other one. They're
right there, yeah.
They're right there, yeah. Which is hard to do with a cover. If you can even remotely get, where you're kind of deciding which cover is better, But yeah, like you said, Chuck Berry, I mean, a lot of people say he's the real king of rock and roll. I'm kind of inclined to agree. But you know, it's hard to dispute which one is better.
Yeah, but they do a bang up job on it. You got to give them credit. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, killer guitar. George really
Yeah.
was learning those licks. All right, top five. You mentioned it a long time ago. It's Please Mr. Postman.
Okay.
I love how they do it. You know, the wait, oh yes. I think
Yeah.
it's great. I love how John's like, oh, like he sounds like he's crying almost. And
Yeah.
then Paul and George are really getting like in their upper register to sing, you know, is there a letter in your bag for me?
Yeah.
And I love how John says, deliver the letter, the sooner the better. Like he almost starts all the words with the letter D. And I love it. You can tell it was a fun one that they enjoyed doing, you know, singing it and playing it. And I don't have a lot to say about it. You kind of talked about it earlier, but
Yeah,
it's always been one of the standouts for me on this album.
it's definitely a good one. I like the Marvelettes better, but
Yeah.
I don't want to disparage it because they do a good job, and I like exactly what you said about deliver the letter.
Yeah.
You gotta wait and you can hear a little rasping in the song in the voice.
Yeah.
Too. It's
Check
solid.
it and see one more time. Like he's really hitting it. Yeah.
Yeah. My number 5 is my last cover, I believe. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. You really got a hold on me. This again, all three of the guys are the three main singers are heard on this one. John and George back and forth. Paul with a harmony. That's an excellent cover. This one works the best on the album for me. Roll Over Beethoven, you could argue, is right there with it, but I love the voices, the three voices on. Anytime you get these guys singing all together in harmony, it works for me. It's one of the things that makes the Beatles click. Why I've always loved them. So
yeah, and I'll just jump right into it. That's my number 4. Is you really got a hold of me, Smokey Robinson. Probably one of the most underrated songwriters in America.
For sure.
I mean, the Miracles had so many hits, but also just the people outside the Miracles. I mean, you know, he wrote My Girl for the Temptations and had all these hits that were covered, you know, by the Beatles. I mean, good grief. That's all you need to know.
Right.
I love the guitar. It's so sad how it sounds.
It is.
And then,
it has a voice of its own, you know. Or
I love how John's going tighter, and then they go tighter, like a little bit higher up, and it's one of those songs where I love most versions of the song. I think that even the Zombies did a version of it. I think maybe the next year, maybe 64, the Zombies did a version. They're one of my favorite British invasion groups, and they really do kind of like a more smoky Motown version. But the Beatles, I mean, they're knocking it out almost note for note. Just with the Beatles vocalizations, George is killing the guitar. It's a classic track. Smokey Robinson, what a genius.
Absolutely. My number 4, you had a little bit a while ago. Don't Bother Me by George. First song he ever wrote. Got that brooding lyric. Don't come around. Leave me alone. Don't bother me. Kind of just wallowing a bit. It's got the guitar solo in the middle, which I really like. And George's voice fits the mood of the song. He's kind of unhappy and he's kind of wants to be alone and somebody did him wrong. I enjoy it. It's one that's grown on me through the years too. Didn't always love it, but it's worked its way up to the number 4 spot for me through the years. I really like it.
Yeah, I love that song, and it's a shame that George never really cared for it that much.
It's a good one.
But again, I mean, that's the same guy, you know, that writes "My Sweet Lord" or "Isn't It a Pity," and
I know.
You know, he's looking back at that like that's just garbage that I wrote for, you know.
Yeah, but to get where you are, you had to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
That's the way you have to look at it. It's a stepping stone to where what he became.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to believe that that's the same guy, but you know,
it is.
Number 3, you had it a while back. I think this could be Paul's most beautiful vocal, and it's "Till There Was You," the Meredith Willson song from The Music Man. It's one that I've tried to learn several times on my nylon guitar. Just great, a great solo by George. I love the it's just it's George really knocks it out of the park on that one, musically. And then that last note that Paul hits, then there was you, and he holds it with,
It
and then
is,
it kind of at the end, it's like cha cha cha, like how it
yeah.
kind of finishes. And I remember hearing it, and I remember playing that one a lot on my, when I had it on my iPod, like just listen to that song over and over and over again, because I loved how Paul sounded on it. And again, Paul, as much as he's given credit for being a songwriter, he's a killer singer. He's one of the best vocalists ever. He can sing anything, and I know we've talked about that before, I think in
Yes.
our White Album video,
Yeah.
but he really can sing the phone book, any kind of style.
That was a strong vocal. I just, the fact that it came from a play, I think drove it down for me. I shouldn't have held it against it, but it just, it didn't
Yeah,
sound like a real Beatles song, but it is an excellent performance by Paul. Got to give it
sure.
that. My number 3 is It Won't Be Long, the opener. I like John's vocal here. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah. I like the yeah, yeahs, and
And then Paul harmonizing the yeah, like really high.
right.
Yeah,
It's got the cool guitar riff in between the vocals. You probably know it better than I do. They're singing, and then all of a sudden the guitar comes in for like 3 notes, and then it goes back to the vocal again. I enjoy it. It won't be long. Yeah.
yeah.
Number 3.
Well, that moves right into my number 2. That's my number 2. Is It Won't Be Long. Killer, another great opener. The Beatles had like that 1-2 punch. With Please Please Me, they had I Saw Her Standing There, and then with this one, It Won't Be Long. They knew how to start an album. I think most of their albums start with a pretty killer opener. Again, another one of those call and response songs. There's obviously some sort of formulaic method happening in their early songs, but either their covers or their their originals. I mean, talk about Little Child earlier, kind of the same style. This is just a stronger song than Little Child.
Right.
Till I belong with you. It's just
That's
it's a great opener. It's not it's not breaking ground lyrically, but it's just a killer early 1960s rock song. And what can I say? It starts off kind of a whirlwind for them after this album came out.
excellent. That gives us another video to make. We should do, after we're done doing this, we should do ranking the Beatles openers.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
I mean, that would be a test in itself, because they're pretty much all strong all the way throughout.
We can do openers, and then we can talk about their 10 worst. We can go all sorts of directions here.
Yeah. Very good. My number 2 is one that you had way back when, but I really always loved this song, and that's All I've Got to Do.
Wow.
By John. It's my number 2 song. It's number 2 song on the album, right? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I just love this song. I think it's a killer vocal by John. Great melody. It changes tempo a bit. All I got to do. My runner-up for best song on the album. Is Call Me on the Phone. It goes right into that after the chorus. I just like that. It works as a Beatles song.
That just shows how the music speaks to us differently.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, that was my number 11, and it's your number 2.
And I had one that was buried that you liked a lot too. Devil in Her Heart was pretty far back for me, and Until There Was You was further back, and you really liked that a lot. So
yeah,
it depends. It's all in the ear of the listener, as they say, right?
But I will say we've done at this point. We've done 3 videos, and so far we have matched up our number 1 song on each video, which moves us to number 1, All My Lovin'.
I've got it right here. I don't know if you can see it. All My Lovin'.
All My Lovin'. It's the song. It's number 3 on the album. It's the song that introduced the United States really to the Beatles. It's on the Ed Sullivan Show. Again, it's another one of those songs that kind of starts without any music. Close your eyes, and then it jumps into it. If there are videos, if you go on YouTube, there are videos. I think it's called "Was John Lennon a Good Rhythm Guitarist?" or "Was John Lennon a Good Guitarist?" And the guy explains this song and shows what John's wrist was doing with that like I don't know how the man didn't get carpal tunnel just with that song. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just it's perfect. I can't believe it was never a number one.
It's hard to
It wasn't a
believe,
number one song. I mean, it's got all the makings of a number one single
for
in the
sure.
early '60s.
Yep.
Paul, it still gets played by Paul. I wish he did it more. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but um, I love now that I know the song so well. When I listen to that song, I listen to what the rest of the band is doing besides Paul's vocal, because there's a lot with the guitars, and it just shows like all the different parts that don't make sense go together, and they make a fantastic song. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's the best song on the album, hands
I
down.
agree. It's clearly the best song on the album by a wide margin, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
it's a quintessential early Beatles song. You have to have this in your playlist if you're a fan of that era. Everything, it's a perfect song. Sing along. It gives you a positive feeling. It's timeless. You can use every superlative in the book, and they all fit for this. Definitely a 10-star out of 10 song on a, maybe a 7 album, but a 10 song here for sure.
Mhm.
I love it. And just a little sidebar, there's an old movie, a depressing movie from the 80s called Testament, which is about nuclear war and a family surviving in California, and nobody around them's alive. They're the last family on earth. And this woman who's trying to protect her kids from the fallout, they're dying slowly in the house. She puts a home movie up of them in better days, of them frolicking and running around. And the song that the director chooses to play over it is All My Loving.
Mhm.
Just the beauty and the innocence of a time gone by when everything was happy and positive. And that's what this song always reminds me of. It. It's just, it's classic early Beatles. It's just a perfect song.
And to go hand in hand with that story, the rumor was that this was the song that John Lennon heard in the hospital after he was shot. That this
Wow.
was the song that was playing, while they were trying to revive him. And I don't know if that was ever 100% confirmed, but that's the story that goes down, that this was the song that John Lennon heard when he took his last breath.
I did not know that. Interesting.
In the hospital. Yeah. But again, to end it on a lighter note, it's one of those early songs where, like, if you were introducing somebody to the Beatles for the first time, this would probably be, if you were to make them an album of 10 songs, this would probably be on it to show their early career for sure.
It would be on it for me. It would be like right in the sweet spot, my number 3 or 4 song going in,
Yeah.
You'd play them. This is what vintage 1963 for Beatles sounded like, and this would be it.
And the thing was, before the Beatles, the world was black and white. After it was in color. This was the song, that turned the world to color, if you're going to go with that analogy, because this was the song that they played on Ed Sullivan and opened up how many different rockers have talked about seeing Ed Sullivan, the Beatles. I mean, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen,
all of them, all that next generation. They're like 5 or 6 years younger than these guys were.
The guys. I mean, the guys like in the Eagles, or even like the guys in Kiss,
all of them,
the later '70s. I mean, it struck so many folks to move into that that rock and roll direction, and it's amazing how much that song did on that first Ed Sullivan appearance.
All those teenagers, like 13, 14, 15, that impressionable age, they're watching Ed Sullivan, they see this, and that's what I want to do. And that's what they did after that. From all the guys you mentioned, I would add John Mellencamp to that list. I know he's mentioned it before.
Yeah.
They are all bitten by the bug at that point.
Yeah.
And thank God for it, because all that great music to come.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Amazing. All right, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. We're going to pick up where we left off next week with Hard Day's Night,
and the Beatles for Sale.
Beatles for Sale. So.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, please leave your comments again. We love to hear the feedback. Thanks, Sam St. John. Subscribe to his channel, please. Leave your favorite song from the Beatles. We enjoy making these, so give us some feedback. Tell us what we're doing right, wrong, indifferent. Leave those comments. Those are important feedback for us to understand that we got to keep pushing ahead, and we can make changes too. If you want to see something different, leave some suggestions as well. So for Sam St. John, we will see you next time out. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care.